Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well. Hello, my name's Steve. I'm the Chief Exec here at CDDFT. Welcome to this week's check-in for colleagues. I had a bit of feedback last week that I sounded like I was in a washing machine, or as Lorraine put it, that I had wind. So hopefully this is better. I'm just running off my laptop, which is why I might look a bit weird. We're on our second go at this. It will still be a bit hit and miss, so please bear with us. I am going to do just a brief intro and then hand over to Lorraine and then to Catherine. I'm just going to chat through a couple of topical issues at the top of the meeting. And then we've had some questions popped in through the web form, which Lorraine is going to kind of work her way through. She's not going to answer them. She's going to put them back to us. And she'll also keep an eye on the chat box. And if you're popping other questions in there, we'll try and do our best to answer those. So we'll try and do a bit more on Q&A this week and less on talk. And this week we'll stick to half an hour. So if we haven't managed to answer all the questions, we'll make sure we come back to those at a future time. I'm hopeful that the Q&A from last week has been shared with colleagues already, and if it hasn't, then it will be dead shortly. So Lorraine's going to do this in more detail, but I just wanted to say thank you to colleagues who've supported patients and colleagues during the period of industrial action. Lorraine will talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to start with a big thank you to colleagues for that. And of course, absolutely recognise that people have concerns that it's completely legitimate to raise, and so that no way saying thank you to those that have supported is that a criticism of colleagues who chose to take action. That's entirely within their right. And for our part, we want to make sure we're working closely with resident doctors to make sure that working lives here at CDFT are as best as they possibly can. So thank you to colleagues who've hosted me. I've had the chance to get out and about a bit, still not nearly as much as I'd like, so please again bear with, but I've had a really useful couple of sessions with various colleagues from across the trust, visiting their services and also meeting teams. So particularly thank you to the colleagues at Hundons Lane here in Darlington who talked to me about their service and their ideas and thoughts, and similarly to the two groups of orthopaedic surgeons from Durham and Darlington. So my experience of those sessions has been really energising and invigorating. People have got loads of ideas, they've got a lot of frustrations as well, which we need to try and work through, but in a way that is clear that we can't fix everything overnight. But I've been really thrilled with the advice and the ideas that people have got to make things better for their colleagues and for patients. Just as a bit of signpost, we've had a few colleagues say, can you say a bit about this in a future team talk, which we'll do. So we won't do it today, but colleagues have asked if we can talk a bit about the work we're going to do on culture, and that is a we thing, that's all of us together. Colleagues have asked if we'll talk about some of the processes we've got in place, so vacancy control and the impact that has on recruitment, and we're doing some thinking about that, so we'll definitely come back to colleagues. It's been a request to talk about Facebook Live, recognising, I haven't yet seen it, but recognising, not Facebook Live, the Facebook closed group, sorry, saying that it's both a valuable way of connecting with colleagues, but that sometimes colleagues find some of the comments may have an impact, so they wanted to have a conversation about that. And two things that we should definitely do. One is about the CRIS system in radiology, and Farouk can chat about the plans for that at an upcoming session. And then it was a request for a topic, but actually we just need to go and do it. We had a really helpful suggestion about why can't we do text reminders, because apparently some systems can't do text reminders for appointments. And so a colleague had asked if we would talk about that, and we should talk about it. We should actually just crack on and see if we can fix it. So it was dead good suggestion. And then there was a question or a request for a discussion about accountability at accountability in general and at senior levels. So again, we'll come back to that. So all I'm doing is just trying to say this is what we've been asked to talk about. We'll cover those topics in due course. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Lorraine, who will just talk about a couple of items and then hand on to other colleagues.
Stephen, I got a few tasks there, so hopefully my multitasking skills will work today, otherwise you'll all see me in chaos. The first one was really about the industrial action. So just to echo Steve's comments, and a huge thank you to everyone for their support, particularly in the planning of the industrial action. I think what's really helpful is teams come together and we manage to maintain safe services as well as maintaining as much as possible of patient care. So whilst we did have some patients that were cancelled or rescheduled, actually that was quite minimal levels in comparison to the levels of activity that continue on a daily basis. So thank you all for your efforts and support in the process. There's probably a couple of areas that I think were raised, particularly over the weekend. I think what would be really useful is just the learning from that factored into next time's planning. So if there was any areas where you weren't necessarily informed as well as you think you should have been, or actually we potentially could have done something different, please reach out to Adrian Curry as the head of EPRR, because then we can build it into next time's planning round if there is future industrial action. The second one was something that we touched on last time, which is the Getting It Right First Time Further Faster programme linked with urgent emergency care. And I think there was a couple of the Associate Director of Ops that dropped in the chat around some of the work that's ongoing. But 3 of the key areas that we're looking at that I thought might be helpful to share with you today are really trying to improve the length of time or reduce the length of time that patients might be within our ED departments. So really no patient being in them for longer than 24 hours. Now that sounds an extremely long time, but there is occasions when we have patients in our ED departments for longer than a full day. That in essence is an inpatient. So we're doing quite a lot of work with partners external to the organisation as well as internally to just try and improve that process. That links with the discharge profile. And I think Joe particularly shared some work that they're doing around discharge, and I'm probably going to bring some of that detail back at a future date, but really trying to think about either home for lunch or home for tea and how do we really improve the patient experience, as well as clearly that flow through the organisation. And the last one's the clinical operating standards, which has been led by the Associate Medical Director for Clinical Standards with collaboration from many individuals across the clinical teams. And I think there's a forum on a Friday where quite often some of those patients where we perhaps think we haven't got the journey right for, there's a conversation in that forum to understand how can we do this better. We are aiming to soft launch or launch the clinical operating standards or transfer from ED policy before the beginning of December. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it before it goes live, again, please reach out because it's important that we communicate that. But the real emphasis is about trying to make sure that patients move through ED to the appropriate specialty as quickly as possible, but in a very safe way. We have got a little bit of an escalation process wrapped around the side. So just as that beds in, making sure we're communicating with the right people, and actually, if we're not getting that timely response, how do we try and support that communication to the right people at the right time to not lose sight of the patient in the middle. We do have a comms plan that'll come out with that, and I'll make sure that goes out in the bulletin, or we can get it out as the next part of team talk. But just want to give you a little bit on that. I'm going to hand you over to Catherine around agency. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So Lorraine and I are in the same office in terms of hearing, so I hope you can hear me okay. In terms of some of the communications that we've had over the last sort of few days, and it has evolved quite quickly, in particular around some of the immediate actions that we've needed to do. As many colleagues will be aware, we have been looking to try and reduce the agency healthcare support worker spend in the organisation, and that is not just from a financial point of view. It's primarily coming from a quality perspective around the care and service that is delivered to our patients, and to make sure that we are appointing into our substantive posts, and that has absolutely been our primary driver. Many of you will know that we've done some significant recruitment events for healthcare support workers in particular over recent years, and we're reviewing the process as to how that is done with some colleagues that are leading that, from particularly from an operational point of view, but with some support from corporate services as well, and we're looking to map that out starting in the next week or so. In relation to the immediate ask, there has been a lot of engagement with our care group colleagues and also with our HR colleagues in relation to some of the immediate asks that came into us as an organisation towards the end of October and beginning of November around the need to look to remove healthcare support worker agency from a dependency perspective, with a reduction in November and preferably removal in November, but an absolute removal by the end of January 2026. What we've been doing in terms of looking at how to operationalise that is working with care group colleagues, particularly with the ADNs and the ADOs, and also with our HR representatives and with Karen Harwood from a safe staffing perspective, around looking at how we can do that in a way that is as safe as possible, recognising that people will feel very concerned about the change, because that is what people have been used to. So the changes will come into effect from tomorrow, and the reason why we've agreed for it tomorrow in terms of that was around enabling the care group ADNs in particular to have some engagement conversations with the matrons in the clinical areas, which they've been doing over the course of this week. We've shared some communications via the ADNs and also through the care groups around actually how we are going to look to enact that, and what process needs to go into place in terms of making sure that we've got some checks and balances in place around making sure that we are making the best use of the teams that we have currently as well. There is a flow chart that, as I say, all of your care group colleagues will have that. If you haven't seen it, please ask them for it, and we can certainly circulate it out after this team talk today if people feel that they haven't had visibility of it, because we absolutely do want to make sure that you have got sight of that. And there is a flow chart, particularly around the processes and stages for sourcing temporary worker cover in the immediate and the long term. There is also a risk assessment that we've put in place around really understanding what that risk entails on a particular area or on a particular shift. And whilst this is not intended to be a paper exercise, this is to absolutely understand if there are any issues or unintended consequences of some of the changes that we need to be put in place. There is a critical escalation part of that, which is why we need that risk assessment to be able to do that, and that will come via your matrons and your care group structures through to your ADNs and ultimately up to me to be able to have that overarching sign-off in hours, and out of hours that will go through tactical and then up to strategic as necessary as well. So that is available, but we will be expecting that all of the actions that have gone through to try and make sure that appropriate cover has been put in place is done at the correct and appropriate time. What I would ask is that when we are looking to do some different recruitment events, particularly from a healthcare support worker perspective, that you come forward and support that. We are absolutely committed to fill the vacancies that you've got in your clinical areas, to be able to make sure that that we have the opportunity to reduce any reliance on temporary workers as well. So we absolutely would advocate that to all of you. And I think I'm passing back to you, Lorraine.
You are, if that's okay. So we thank you, Catherine. We had quite a few questions last time that I think were either picked up in the chat or directly following the briefing. So there's a couple on here. The first one being around when will the theatre recovery at DMH be handed back over to the department, and referencing quite a lot of investment. Probably the honest answer at this point in time is I don't know, and we don't know. We haven't necessarily had that conversation around what's going to be the plan in terms of clinical strategy and what are going to be the plan for the clinical services, and then how are they then going to utilise the estates that we have within the sites of the organisation. So at this point in time, probably a bit of a sorry, can't answer that, but I'd rather say I can't answer that than give you an answer that's probably not going to be the right one in 6 months. So first one is, I'm sorry, we can't yet. Next one's a little bit about parking. So I'm going to hand you over to Alison McCree, who's going to pick up the question, which was around patients who are arriving late and can be quite stressed. And this is also having an impact on the nursing teams that are trying to run the clinic. So over to Alison.
Car parking is a challenge. It's a challenge for patients, visitors and our staff, particularly at peak times. We know that the car park at Durham for the public, it's full between 10 and 4 every day, Monday to Friday. But we are getting a lot of data from the new system that we put in. And when we put that system in, it was a great improvement for patients. You know, we were getting really good feedback that we could get parked. But what's happened is in October of this year, or just last month, they've closed the private car park on the UHND site. So that's had a big impact on us. So we are seeing more complaints coming through, which we're dealing with. So in order to try and offset that, what we're looking at the moment is where the buildings have been demolished on the UHND site, can we build a case that'll stack up financially to actually convert some of that space, that land, into additional car parking spaces? And that will also, hopefully, if we can deliver that, cease the need to use the car parking spaces over in County Hall, but also staff who are using the public car park would then be able to get a space in the staff. So that's the scheme that we're working on for the UHND site. We've also had a business case approved to completely reconfigure the existing car parks on the DMH side. So construction will start in early January. It'll reconfigure the existing car parks, and we'll put the ANPR system in as well. So hopefully that will be able to make better use of those spaces and have better data as well to manage that service on. It would be remiss of me not to mention alternative travel options. So they are available on the website. So, you know, we do publish the bus timetables, park and ride services, patient transport. But we do recognise it's a problem, and we are doing everything we can to look at how can we overall improve it. So I'll hand back to Lorraine.
Thanks, Alison. So there's quite a few in the chat, Steve, particularly for yourself, around going to visit teams. So we'll probably just need to take down where all of them are, and I'm sure you'll get around to them all very quickly. The next one I was going to pick up specifically was on staff survey. So there was a couple of comments last time around the anonymity of the staff survey, but then managers being given breakdown of the information. So Andrew, I didn't know whether you wanted to come in and give a little bit more information around the staff survey.
Yep, sure. Thank you very much. So I think it's probably worth just giving a quick update on where we are in terms of our response rate as well, if I can. So overall, we're almost at 33% of colleagues having responded to the staff survey, which is great. Slightly down on where we were last year, and it would be great if we could improve our scores from last year. To give you some indication, the highest response rate across organisations similar to ours, so acute and community organisations, the highest response rate currently is almost at 66%. So we're about halfway, or 50% of the highest response rate. Just in relation to the anonymity of the staff survey, I think it is a really important point, and thank you to the person that asked the question around this. So we do provide the details of what our organisational hierarchy looks like to PICA, who are the independent organisation that deal with our staff survey. So we provide them with details of what our organisation looks like and staff numbers. They then make contact with everyone via email, and they can indicate through reports, and we literally just get numbers. We don't get any details on the individual members of staff that have responded to the staff survey or what their responses tell us. It's all kind of numbers against the specific questions asked in the staff survey. When the staff survey closes, they then spend an awful lot of time analysing that information and putting it into themes, responses to certain questions, and it's that report that we get back as an organisation without names, without understanding any of the individuals who've responded to it. But I think it's really important that we do get that information down to team, ward, departmental level, because it gives us that much more granular and really valuable information about what it's like for you personally to work in this organisation as part of your team. So please don't be worried if people are encouraging you to fill it in. Please don't be worried about the anonymity. I can absolutely guarantee I have no idea who has filled in a staff survey so far, who hasn't yet filled in a staff survey, or what they've said in that staff survey. We will get that themed report probably in January, February time. And it's that we then produce our results and our findings from, but absolutely no individual data is contained within that response. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thanks, Andrew. So, Steve, there's a specific question for you, if it's okay. So it's asked that given the issues the Trust has at the moment, what is the one thing you would ask all staff to do to begin to improve things?
That's harder than any of my interview questions. Okay. So I'm probably going to cheat and maybe have more than one, which probably won't be a surprise to everybody. So I think the thing I'd probably say is my biggest ask is one of the things that I put in the email a couple of weeks ago, which you may or may not have seen, which is about standards. So we all want to be really proud of where we work and proud of the team that we work with and proud of the service that we offer to people. And so they're connected points. So number one is let's aim high in terms of standards for ourselves and for people that are coming into our services, whether they're in hospitals or community. And remember the phrase, what you put up with, you promote. And then the second sort of connected thing is you have loads of really brilliant ideas. So I want to get to a place where you sort of don't need to tell us about your ideas, just get on and do them. Because so standards and also trust in yourselves and try and make you are best placed to know how to improve your work. I know we haven't necessarily created the environment for that, but for that to be easy, but have a go. Because everyone that I've spoken to so far has had some really good ideas. Because I'm cheating, and Lorraine, you can't see it, but Lorraine's scowling at me on the little green room thing I can see. But I talked last time about the importance around quality, and so there are a few things I'd just like to ask people to pay attention to, without making it a huge long list. So the first is deteriorating patients. And we need to work with colleagues to understand what is getting in the way of us doing observations consistently and then responding to them. And patients are coming to a degree of harm across our sites because we're not managing to do what we would expect and want. Now there'll be reasons for that, and so that needs all of us. The second thing is, I know everyone's really busy, but responding to feedback from patients is dead important, and learning from feedback from patients is dead important. We've got it takes us a long time to respond to complaints from colleagues, and it takes us a long time to respond to patient safety incidents, which means we're missing the chance to make our services better. So those are the other two I would particularly highlight. So I'm sorry for cheating on the answer, but I hope that makes sense. Back to you, Lorraine.
Thanks, Stephen. The scowl is probably just the permanent frown of trying to see the screen and the chat and the question and answers, which they're coming in through both chat and question and answers today, so a bit of a challenge. There is one in the chat quite early on around the normalisation, perhaps, or how it feels as a normalisation of patients that are in the day room and in corridors. And I know we've touched on this a couple of times, but before we left today, I thought it was quite important that to go to Catherine, if that's okay, and just to see if Catherine wants to respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So yeah, and thank you for putting that comment in as well. We did mention it last week and it has been mentioned in the conversation this morning. And I think what Steve's described in terms of his and our priorities around quality and what we can do around improving standards and experience for our patients is really important. None of us want our patients to be in temporary escalation spaces for themselves, for their family, or for our staff, because it puts a lot of pressure in a lot of places. But equally, what we don't want to do is to have people all consolidated in the emergency department. That then stops also patients coming into hospital and the emergency department and the ambulance service being unable to deal with patients that they also need to prioritise as part of that wider piece of work. we absolutely must do something around trying to improve the flow, and there are things that are within our gift to be able to try and do, and that is around looking to try and prioritise when we discharge patients in the day, how we move patients in the day, because actually a lot of our work is done very late in the afternoon and into the evening, which then increases the risks of higher numbers of patients in temporary escalation spaces. So my ask would be is that we all work together in terms of from a wider leadership team around how we can commit to try and look to support our patient flow earlier in the day to minimise that risk of patients in temporary escalation spaces. Lorraine's made reference to many of the quality improvement projects that are in place around trying to support flow. And last week we talked about the point in time assessments around really understanding that risk. But again, as Steve has said, you know the answers more than what we do, and we're happy to try and help drive some of the improvements alongside with you. But if you've got any ideas and support around how we can look to reduce the numbers of patients in temporary escalation spaces, we are absolutely committed to hearing what those examples might be, because we don't, as I say, we don't always know the answers, and we absolutely want to do that. We don't want it to feel normalised, patients in temporary escalation spaces. We absolutely do not. And and as I say, we need to do everything that we can to try and minimise that and hopefully reduce that over a period of time. But we can't do that without your help and your support in terms of driving that forward. I'll hand back to Lorraine.
Thanks, Catherine. There's quite a lot in the chat around secretaries and recruitment and banding of secretaries or administration staff. What I was going to suggest is the elements on the secretaries and the banding we'll take away and have a look at and come back on a future date. But there's a couple of bits on recruitment. So I was going to hand back to Andrew on the recruitment processes. So Andrew, back to yourself.
Okay, thanks. I'm struggling to see the bits specifically around recruitment processes. I can see Alison has mentioned that she's got some really good ideas on how we can improve recruitment retention. Those ideas are always welcome, so please do feel free to reach out and get in touch. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. I think just more generally around vacancy control forms, and it is something that we'll bring back maybe in a little bit more detail once we've got the processes absolutely ironed out. But I certainly had a chat with my team yesterday about trying to automate this and make it a much slicker process. And I know that there are other changes that we've kind of got in train on this. So again, if it's okay, I think what we'll do is we'll come back with a full response on all things recruitment. But I will certainly pick up the piece around rebanding as well at a future team talk. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thanks, Andrew. Steve, if you're comfortable, I think we're nearly at the time, so I was going to hand back to yourself to close down.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Brilliant quiz mastering, as it were. Thank you everyone for joining. Like, the time just flies a bit, and I'm sorry that there are some questions we've probably not got to today, but we will come back to them. For those that have been popping stuff in the chat on future topics, we'll definitely also come back to those. I think we are literally at 2:30. So thank you ever so much for joining. Huge thank you for the stuff that is in the chat box, and rest assured we're not just going to like spectate it and ignore it. We will absolutely come back to it and try and do something about it. Just please, as I say, bear with us. We're trying to do a lot together, all of us, and I'm conscious of I'm conscious there's a lot for us to make changes on. So we'll do absolutely our very best, and we will definitely also be leaning on lots of you guys to help make the changes, because if it all rests with us, then now it will happen. With that, huge thank you. As colleagues have said, I hope you have a good rest of day. I wanted to just flag one thing, which is we've put a session in tomorrow for any colleagues who want to join. I've just forgotten the time. I think it might be 9 o'clock. Which is just to give colleagues a heads up and a bit of information about some information that we will be publishing in the not too distant future about the governance review that's happened in the trust following the issues in the breast service. So for those of you who want to join, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll make sure the information in there is available to those who aren't able to join, and have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you at the same time next week.